so the Meg 2 is the most mindless, fun movie that you could probably watch in theaters today. Where I was at the, like literally I'm watching there, and then every time like the next ridiculous thing happens, I was kind of like, okay, like this, like that was me the whole time, like. Okay, cool. Like, it's like I know it's crazy ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. There's no like the science of some of the things they explain makes no sense, or like it looks like lazy writing, or there's some really bad cheesy dialogue, but you're just like, you know what? I don't care, because this just looks like it's fun. And clearly, like
Oh my
in the
God.
movie, they weren't taking like some of their stuff seriously. And there's moments like the bad guys are as one dimensional as any bad guy in a Mortal Kombat movie from the 90s. That there's this one moment, like, okay, spoiler alert, where like one of the bad people in the movie, she's like, oh yeah, this glass is thick, and like Jason Statham's character is like all worried about it, and she turns around and like, oh, we should for our office, like I was thinking we should like, and she's talking about some interior, like she gets into something really frivolous, and then one line later and there's a shark that just busts through and eats her, and it's just. And I was like, that moment, I'm like, yes, because of course that will happen. And I am all for that. And yes, you do deserve to be in, and that's funny. And I do not care if it's ridiculous. It's that, and that was the whole movie. That was literally the whole. Yeah.
Okay, that is what I am reading, because you guys, the Rotten Tomato critics, the critics' comments on this movie are freaking hilarious. I actually kind of want to read the top one, because it's so dead. This franchise needs to be buried at the bottom of the Atlantic for a couple of decades, along with some illegally dumped nuclear waste. Perhaps then it might finally mutate into something entertaining. She is from The Observer in UK. Her name is Wendy. Wendy-eyed.
Yep.
Hilarious. That is basically mirroring all of the critics about what they're saying about this movie. They're saying it's so bad, it's bad. Like, it's so bad that there's just like there's no saving graces. But so critics' choice score right now is 29%, which I actually don't even know.
I think that's a valid number, although I feel like that might be a little too high, because I feel like there's been better movies that have had worse scores in the past.
Hilarious. So the only other movie in theaters that's doing that poorly is Mobland, and I don't even know what that movie is.
I've never heard of that one.
Me either.
Like Jason Statham is in this movie as like he's got it's one of the most stiff performances from Jason Statham I've seen. But like he's got a natural charisma to him. There's some of the action stuff that he does, he's good at, right? But anytime he's not in an action sequence, he looks very stiff, clearly out of place, and clearly they have him in this movie because he's a star. He draws an audience. People like seeing him in action movies, but you could tell like he's a limited performer in the sense that he's not the best actor.
He's not. He's not an actor first. He's not a guy first.
He's not what you would call it. Yeah, he's not like a thespian or somebody who you would like call to do a stage play.
He's not a thespian.
So and there's definitely moments in this movie where I'm like, yeah, you know what, like, yeah, it's Jason Statham. What else can I ask for? Like, okay, I'll just take it as I. And the other. I
feel like everybody is saying that about this movie. You just got to take for what it is, because that's really awful, and you got to just lean into how cringy bad it is. And I'm like,
but like that's the best attitude to go towards this movie and go in. You should not have any expectations. If anything, you should expect something terrible, because then you'll just have a better time with the movie.
Did it at least make you laugh?
Like, there was definitely some ridiculous moments. There are some fun, there are some cool moments in the movie. I will give it that. But there are some very ridiculous moments. There's a couple of horror moments in the early part where they're in the trench, and where you actually start like I feel like that's probably the best directed part of the movie. But then there's things like where Jason Statham at some point in like what I assume they were referring to as a trench could be like something like the Mariana Trench, which is so deep that the only way humans could survive down there is if they're in these pressurized vessels. And okay, so they have these super suits that they developed, which help them survive. But at one point, he just goes out into the water and he's like, oh yeah, as long as I clear my sinuses and let the water into my sinuses, the pressure will even out and the water won't crush me. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. The pressure will crush you like a grape, because you may have filled your sinuses with water, but you did not fill your blood vessels or anything else in your body. Like, you would be crushed in an instant. That's why we saw that it was in the news a few weeks ago with that sub that was going down to the Titanic. The
Yeah.
trench would be even farther down. Then the pressure is even higher. It made absolutely no sense, but in the moment I'm like, okay, they at least tried to give it an explanation. Whatever. It's not that kind of movie. Let's just keep watching. So that was kind of my
There's no
attitude
science
throughout the
here.
movie.
Keep going.
Yeah, like I was like, okay, you know what? They tried. At least they did not just say like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. Like people, they tried to give an explanation. I'm like, all right, cool. A for effort, and we'll just keep moving along.
So
But then,
audience score is a little bit higher. It's 74%.
mhm,
So people are liking the movie. Like
yeah,
people that are going to see it are kind of, I think, walking into it with that sort of mindset of like,
yeah,
it's gonna be the worst freaking movie
exactly.
on
I
earth.
think
Let's just
this is a great
enjoy it.
example. It's a great example of a movie where people are going in with the right set of expectations. I mean, at least most of them. Like
I feel like
74%
that
isn't
is so
too high.
important nowadays because
Yeah,
I feel like I walked into Renfield expecting it to be awful, and it was actually pleasantly kind of funny.
hmm,
And I feel like when you give a movie like that absolutely no expectations, that is when you can be surprised. Or it fits in exactly with what you thought it was going to be, and that's fine too. Like The Witcher. When I watched The Witcher, I anticipated being awful. And then I built like a fondness for it. I'll be
yeah,
honest. The new season just
yeah.
came out, and I'm like, yeah, it is
If you
what
expect
it is.
if you go in expecting the greatest thing ever, then I think most of the time you'll end up being disappointed. But if you go in with a movie like this, you just gotta
Yeah.
go in expecting like very little in terms of a good movie. You're going to watch a bad movie, and you're just gonna have fun with it. And then
Yeah.
this movie delivers on all the things that I think. There's plenty of sharks. There's a few other like Jurassic sort of animals in this movie that almost at some point this movie starts feeling like a Jurassic Park movie.
Okay,
Um,
it kind of gives that, right? Because the megalodon is like supposed to be
yeah,
some massive dinosaur
and
creature.
And the other thing was this movie, like when I walked in, I was like, okay, I saw a couple of Chinese, company logos in the beginning of the movie. So I was like, okay, so this is Chinese finance. Like that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of movies today that
Yeah.
are like, so it's nothing new. Like even Independence Day Resurgence was like half Chinese finance. And you could tell sometimes when you see that, there's a big influence in the movie itself. So almost half of this movie, not almost half, but let's say maybe like 30-40% of this movie was like in and around like the in the South China Sea, I think, or like in that part of the world. Also, like people just speaking in Chinese and you're reading English subtitles. Half of this cast, the feature cast in the movie, or like basically half the main cast was like Chinese, and so you have a lot of like they clearly are aiming to make this a big hit with Chinese audiences, which I'm
Yeah.
completely fine with. I
How
mean,
is
like,
it
and
doing?
these,
Has it already released in China?
I'm not sure if it is, but even if it
Oh,
hasn't,
interesting.
it probably
Yeah,
will.
it will
And
probably do really well over there.
the fact that it's making like up to close to like 150 million on its global box office debut, while only making like 30 of that in domestic North American box office, that clearly means that there's plenty of legs. There's plenty of audiences out there.
Yeah.
The first Meg started off with a similar number, and then eventually finished at like 500 some odd million.
So where are we at in the box office right now? I don't think I saw any reports about that yet.
So it's currently set to make somewhere in like the high 20s, if I'm correct. So
Okay.
it's not the final numbers don't come out usually till Monday,
Yeah.
but it's looking at like high 20s, maybe around 30 million.
Yeah.
And worldwide it's coming out to like upwards of 120, which is
Mhm.
a pretty solid number for like a
Yeah.
movie like this.
It's
And
good.
again, it's one of those things where people will go watch it. They won't expect it to be a fantastic movie. I mean, but like you'll get the sharks, you'll get Jason Statham like beating up
And
sharks,
also,
holding back
after
sharks.
getting so many politically charged movies, right? Like Oppenheimer is
Hmm.
so heavy. Barbie, fairly politically charged. There are like a lot of
Yeah,
there's a lot of conversation to be had about the movie.
yeah.
This feels like a really dumb breath of fresh air.
It just exactly. It's just there to give you like a bunch of fun shark action. Of people
Yeah.
getting eaten by
Love that for
sharks,
us.
killing
Cool.
sharks. That's all there is. There's
Sharks.
nothing.
Sharks.
There's no bigger purpose to this movie existing other than just for you to go watch it, have some dumb fun at the movie theaters, and then that's it. That's really it.
I mean, it's like almost as cringy as Jaws was. Like the OG Jaws is cringy. Like when you
There's
watch it back,
definitely
it's like
moments, yeah. because it's got it's got this like
God.
crazy psychosis effect to it, where like
Oh,
once you get into the movie, you're in it. But like if you recount your experience after the fact, you're like,
what the?
but like like the suspension of disbelief doesn't quite
Yeah.
hold up in hindsight. So yeah, I
Totally.
definitely agree with you on that.
Well, I mean, people are going to keep going and seeing it. You guys let us know if you do go see it, what you think about it. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do all those things.